Now, I see a lot of purportedly awakened people online acting kind of like they think everybody should have figured out what's going on by now, which is a little bit unempathic as far as a realistic view of how deep the deceptions and curses go in this world. These people are acting like, hey, disclosure has already happened and it's just totally clear which side is which, who you should be following. And if you're still deceived, oh, that's on you. It's too late for you. We're just going to go ahead and work with the people who figured it out. And that's honestly pretty harsh because things are not that clear for most people at all. And it really makes me question the true motivation of some of these people who are publicly validating the psychology of leaving others behind. You know, there's a lot of false prophets out there these days. You have to be careful who you follow. They really make the poisoned honey seem very sweet. These fallen angel types have made a science of pretending to be divine while leading people away from true divinity for a very long time. And I personally see a lot more confusion than clarity as far as the general expressions and shared sentiments of humanity are concerned. But the more clarity we can provide, the less people will be willing to consent to the literal demonic mass dystopian enslavement of their souls. So it's important to analyze how people are willing to absorb and receive information based on their current worldview, which is very difficult. Well, which is very different from the simple distribution of information. And obviously, I'm not exactly perfect at conforming to the common worldview with my presentation, but I can still overanalyze how it works. I mean, if I'm not careful, I'm just going to start defining how it all boils down to the archetypal polarized motivation of spiritual consciousness and what the will of God for humanity is. Neither of which are really on the radar of most people whose sense of reality is based in illusion and their sense of motivation is based primarily in instinctive selfish pleasure. You know, furthermore, not very many people exactly consider me an authority on those topics, which kind of circles back to the original point, which is that the act of convincing people that you're an authority on something is a fundamentally separate topic compared to being an authority on something. And sadly, if we want to protect people from deception in this world, we have to appeal to their perceptions of authority and how they're willing to assimilate information. Now, it's important to further understand that the most prolific components of this demonic soul harvesting machine that we're up against, you know, these celebrities and politicians and news anchors, most of them are completely enslaved and have no idea what's going on. As a sort of basic example, do you really think that, say, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the ex-governor of California and prolific TV personality, do you think that in spite of all of his accolades, in spite of all of the places he's been in his life, do you think he actually has any idea that he has acted as a puppet of a demonic conspiracy to enslave human souls? Of course, he doesn't have any idea that that's going on. You know, very, very few of these popular people have any idea what's going on because they are completely enslaved by these same illusions that the rest of humanity are. Most of them aren't in on it. They're in it because they bought and sold themselves into it, but now they're just little gears in the mass soul enslavement apparatus. They have no idea. So, you know, consider their relative ignorance in contrast with the fact that what I'm creating, that my words out here are banned and blockaded and shut down as much as they can possibly make the entire AI shut everything that I've created down. Like if you consider that, you'll paint a little bit of a picture of what's going on here. You know, my tiny little channel among the rest of Earth's best kept secrets is just trying to tell people as plainly as I possibly can how to save the future of your souls from demonic deception and decay, which is pretty subtle. And I'm not like wrapping it in code or gematria and saying, oh, if you can decode and solve my intel agency puzzle, then maybe you'll be worthy of being one of the warriors who helps and save and protect the world. No, I'm just telling everybody plainly. All you have to do is get your soul right before God. And, a lot of people have said that, but I've gone into the little bit more complex detail about how that works. And you might want to get your psychological, spiritual shield ready in the meantime, because God has enemies in this world, and they want to eat your souls, and they want to eat the souls of your children. Now, as far as the topic of influencing people, we can't necessarily use the term God with people who associate God with some sort of demon, which is a common perception that people have with that association there. So that's a big part of why everybody's using the term source these days. So, even breaking things down to the simplest terms of, what helps the future, what harms the future, what is good and right and pure, what is deceptive and wrong and impure, all of that has to be contemplated through the lens of whatever the limitations of our particular audience are. And the enemies of God know this well. It's much easier to be appealing by tempting people with illusions than it is to entice people with spiritual and moral philosophy, which has to do with the eternal future of their souls and the fate of the earth. So, how do we warn people about what's going on right in front of them when reality has been made to sound like a fantasy novel to them? Well, we kind of have to explain it to people like children. We have to be patient. There are people who are motivated solely by power. Naturally, they conspire to use deception to steal the power of others. Naturally, they try to manufacture the consent of others to steal their rights and their power. Controlling your mind controls your fate. Almost all deceptions are made to look like false virtues so that people just hate who they're told to hate rather than contemplating opposing views using reason. Basically we have to rebuild people's scarred, damaged brains, and we have to appeal to their sense of entertainment or authority while we're doing it. So you got to think about how that plays out in everything that we choose to share with one another. We are quite literally fighting to save souls from a horrifying fate on this planet. People don't deserve to be tortured and exploited like they are just because they're gullible, just because they get sucked into a fake normal that's been manufactured for them. It's not easy to totally pierce through the illusion and just be like, oh, so there's bloodlines of hybrid demon alien incest cannibals who have conspired for millennia to enslave and deceive the entire samsara by exploiting the amnesia of reincarnation so that they can consume the sacred manna from divine souls and wage war against God. Obviously, that's what's going on. That isn't really easy to come to. So when I see people acting like, oh, everybody should have just figured it out by now, and we can just leave everybody else behind, like I said before, I really question those people's motivation. Even as we're working at the highest level using super military counter AI technology to try to minimize the demonic incursion of the infection of human minds, we have to constantly take into account how to present information to humanity to minimize harm. Because convincing people to devolve into irreconcilable enemies is the biggest weapon that evil has. Or, there might be some semantic nuances as far as the scale of spiritual weaponry is concerned, but making people destroy themselves by scarring and torturing them psychologically until they bend their knees to things other than the true, perfect divinity of the Creator is definitely up there as far as spiritual warfare is concerned, as far as weapons of spiritual warfare are concerned. Anyways, that's all for today. I just kind of wanted to reduce this topic back to its core components, to encourage contemplation, that we can't bring people to truth by just giving them truth. We have to really consider how they allow themselves to think about these various topics. Meanwhile, all the nonsense that we're told to fight and argue over is an infinitely refilling room of slippery soap. So we also can't really gain much ground by fighting in the manufactured arena of what the fake news and friends tell us to bicker about. So we have to consider, or in our consideration of how to present truth to people, We should often also consider how to fundamentally bypass what we're being fed to fight against and just think about how to present what's truly important to people in ways that they can understand. And what's truly important is and always will be fundamentally the trajectory of the psychological and moral evolution of the will of our souls. So yeah, go ahead and wake me up when people want to know more about that topic, because I've tried to leave a long, fiery trail of information about how the fate of humanity is determined in this spiritual war through the manipulation of beliefs, but for some reason the manner in which I present information isn't quite compelling enough to break through this wall of censorship and inspire sharing and connection. Anyways, all it takes is truth and understanding, and the Matrix fundamentally cannot harvest energy because it relies entirely on deception, on peer pressuring the love and authenticity out of souls. So please do not be overeager to leave people behind, though it is sort of an inevitable component of ascension. But while we're still here, we should try to think about how to help people in spite of their illusions.